Yay! Okay, we'll wait for someone to see. But anyway, waiting for. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Hangout with Sophie Lark. And this time we have Lena Erickson with us. I'm so excited. Yay! Welcome, Lena. We're so happy you could join us in the, well, I guess it's not late hours, but in the evening hours.
It's kind of late hours.
Yeah. I asked her when I invited her, I was like, so what's the latest you're willing to stay up? Because we'll go as early as we have to for you.
Well,
I almost always talk to Lena when it's night there.
Yeah, we always talk in the evenings. We always talk in the evenings.
I just assume it's always dark in Denmark. This is how Denmark always is in my eyes.
I could get her sometimes when it's like midnight for me. I'll see she's starting to like things that I shared the day before. So I'll be like, oh, Lena must be awake for the day. But I know my friends in, like there's some in Norway and Germany who are joining us who are happy that this is at an early time. So
yes.
Lena really put such a beautiful perspective into Anastasia because she is European and there is like Danish monarchy right in the story. And I feel like Lena had this whole other perspective on certain things being from actually over there.
Oh, and someone from Spain. Hi, Polly. Glad you could join. Oh, Polly, that's great. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I almost don't know where to start because I'm so excited. It's also been such a long time because this book has been a journey, as I say. There's so many jokes and things that I can make about that. But when we visited, this was just kind of getting kicked off. So
it was a true labor of love for Lena and I. We worked on it all year long. I don't think we've ever worked harder on anything in our entire lives, if I can speak for both of us. And we made this thing that we were so passionate about and that we love so much, and that was just everything that we wanted it to be. We got all the art finished that we wanted, and even some more that Lena came up with right at the end that really tied it all together. And it was just such a project of the heart.
Yeah,
so exciting.
It was hard to just not to stop drawing when first we got into it. It was just like, I need to draw more. Just kept on getting ideas.
Lena still is sending me just like cute little Anastasia and Damien sketches. Like she was doing one the other day where she's doing like Christmas theme ones and all these just like cute little extras. It's like, we're done, but we can't be done.
I love that. Oh, see, I'm just going to keep everyone's sending all the praise in. So I'm just going to keep going through those. But we will get started with some of these. I have the questions that were sent in, and I'm sure people will throw us in some, but we're going to dive right in because obviously there's a lot of differences writing this book than anything else you've done. But this is for Sophie, but obviously, Lena, you jump in to any of these questions that you have something for as well. We want to start with what changed about the process for this novel versus previous ones, because on author hangouts we usually talk about the process and the building of your stories. So what was different this time?
So the main difference was that I was sending Lena things more while I was in progress. Previously, she had drawn things from my works that were already done, already completed, and now she was doing something that I was actually currently working on. So she would do things in the drawings, like she would pull out some symbol, or she would emphasize something from the story, or slightly change the character design. And sometimes I'd be like, oh, that's actually better than what I was kind of thinking. I'm going to lean more in this direction. So we had this really nice feedback system where we were each just kind of inspiring each other and kind of bouncing ideas off each other, and it was incredibly collaborative.
Yeah, because we talked a lot about ideas for scenes and how the story would go, and sometimes Sophie would just be like, well, Lena, I have this and this idea, and I think I'm going to turn the story in this and this direction. And then based on that, I would start sketching out some stuff, some scenes that I thought, okay, maybe she will do this, and I sketched some things out, and Sophie would be like, oh, I love this, but maybe we could change this and this and that. And yeah, it's been a combined process, I would say.
Yeah, it was really fun and really inspiring, and we were already having all these ideas for the next thing, and it just it's the same thing when I'm bouncing ideas off Ryan, brainstorming with him. The more people that you have who are interested in a project and who are just intelligent people who are really good at what they do, like Lena, and it just feeds this engine that just gets bigger and bigger.
I love that. I love that. So what were some of the toughest aspects of writing this time around? Sorry, my words are mixing up. But in the way that, like, I know a lot of your previous books, there were a lot tighter deadlines for things, but, you know, you definitely were able to pull those off. So, you know, what were kind of the tougher aspects with this? Why the pushback, like the date pushback, things like that?
This one, definitely the historical research stuff took a long time, and I'm sure Lena will probably say the same thing with the art. Like, she creating a world that is not only historical but is also mixed with your own fantasy version of it. It's not exactly our world, it's a different version. So you're kind of creating this unique world, but also trying to add in things that are real, that give it this sense of reality that sometimes is hard to create inside of fantasy. And Lena did that so incredibly with the costume design. She would pull out all of these real elements from like Cossack and Russian clothing and just clothing from the area. But then she would also just do like she gave Rasputin kind of this almost like Middle Eastern vibe because he has like ties to these other areas of the country. And it was, she put so much thought into every little thing inside of it.
So yeah, I would say that how to keep the line fine between what is fiction and what is fact. That was mainly the hardest part, to create something that people would recognize, but not necessarily be able to Google or whatever, because it is a fantasy world still. So, but still on something like that could have happened in the real world, but still very much fantasy. So I tried to put that into especially the costume designs for like really just be true to whatever I see that is historically accurate for that time period, but also making it a bit more my own. So we necessarily wouldn't, what should I say, be straight out uniform or dress from that period, because I like to have my creative freedom sometimes.
Well, and Lena would do all these things too, where it's like there's historical details in it, like the sword or the clock, but she also did a lot of like symbolic and magic elements in the illustrations, a lot of things from like dreams or visions or when the magic is actually happening. And then she would put like all these like foreshadow elements into it. And it was just, her art is like real art with so much thought behind it and so much depth to it. And I'm very, very excited for people to see it in color, because when we do the color version, it's not twice as good. It's like 10 times as good. The way that Lena combined the colors is just electric in this book. So pretty.
Yeah. Well, actually, last night I went to my friend's house and we watched Anastasia. I was waiting for her to be done with school because I was like, I want to watch this. And so I brought over my book and I was like, hey, look at this book. Isn't this great? And so I'm showing it to her. And then I was like, yeah, but you really got to see it like this. And she was like, oh my God, I want it. I was like, someday you can have it. Someday soon. So anyway, we're very excited. My friends were just like, oh my God, I want it. And I was like, I know you want it. I want it too, but it's right here. So anyway.
Just the perfect blue that Lena chose, that's almost like this deep, deep, deep teal. It's like blue with just a little green in it, which is so great with Anastasia's red hair. And then Damien's like symbolic color is green, so it kind of like feeds into that. It's just, every decision is perfection.
See, everyone loves it so much.
Yeah, she does. That's so true.
I love it. Okay. So my question, Lena, for you along with that is like, where did you find inspiration outside of the story? And I'm sure some of it was from history, but you know, where did that style kind of come from besides just from Sophie writing it for you and inspiring it?
Well, that's a hard question, because literally it comes from my own brain.
That works. That's an answer.
Whenever I read Sophie's writing, I always get like, I see a movie. So when I can, get into the story, I get this. It's like the words disappear and images appear instead of the words. And so, but for Anastasia, it was kind of different because I knew I had to do a drawing for each chapter. So eventually I like watching the scenes play out in my mind, and then I would do little what we call them, stamps or templates, like small tiny sketches, like stick figures basically, where I would put them in a frame of some sort, like frame them, and then be like, oh, I want the characters to symbolize this with the bridge, or this with where they are talking or dancing or whatever. And I would just get the image in my mind, and then I would start to move around with the figures, and then eventually, when it came to clothing the characters, I would go maybe on Pinterest and search some words. Mainly, I would just be like historical uniforms or historical Russian or uniforms or something like that, like First World War uniforms from all over Europe, and then I would just pick and choose whatever. Like I like the shoulder piece from this uniform, but I like the color from another uniform. I don't know. It is very hard to describe how I, would actually do it, because it just kind of appears in my brain.
No, that's okay.
When Lena was first doing it, she was putting frames around the pictures, and that one that you just showed, that Anastasia one, was the first one she ever drew a frame around, like a portrait of Anastasia. And then she was like, I think I might do different frames around all the pictures. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, won't you get tired of doing that? Like, and then she was like, no, I literally have infinity ideas for frames, because her frames like perfectly shape the picture, but they also like tell you something about the picture. So like this one of Rasputin here, it's like this frame like almost has these like little devil horns on it, because this is the part in the story where he's kind of revealed as sinister. These frames, once she goes to like the Cossack village, have like these natural wood elements around them, because Damien's people live a more naturalistic life that's more tied to nature and is more out in the wild. And the way that like, and when you can see these in color, you'll see that like Damien's frames are wooden, whereas like the Anastasia frames in the palace are like gilded and made of gold. Like Lena is putting like 3D level chess thought into every decision that she makes, with even the littlest details.
There's nothing in the artworks that are just put there to spark your eye. There's literally, I tried at least. I can't say what people would get out of it, but I tried to put as much symbolism and meaning into everything I put into the artworks, so that if people would just be like staring at them for whatever time they want, they could, maybe find some little details that I put in it. I put in some hidden symbols that was actually written, not in the book, but it was said these symbols were scribbled all around a book frame. And I was like, I'm going to put those symbols on the frame. And if you search those symbols, you will actually get a hidden meaning.
Nice. I love it. When I was talking with Lena by myself the one day, I was telling her about my experience of reading it. And one of the things I started to do, I mean, I didn't even realize I was doing it, but then eventually I was like purposely doing it, is that because I knew there would be a picture in every chapter, I was trying to guess like what she was like, what she was gonna get done. And when I would be right, I would be very happy, because I'd be like, yes, I guess what the like meaning of this chapter was, and that's what the picture is. So I would get very excited.
Well, and it gives you a little hint. So like at the start of every chapter, you have your chapter heading art, and then that gives you a hint of like what the actual art will be once you get inside the story. It's like, it doesn't spoil anything, but you can sort of guess where you're going sometimes. So it's so fun.
Oh, Melissa, I love that you're joining us from the airport. Thank you. You are a fan. And of course, Tiffany popping in. I mean,
I love Tiff. She is such a sweetie.
Serious interview. She picks up on everything. I just love it. So
she really does. She like notices things where it's like I like barely even like hinted or thought about that, and she immediately like zeroes in.
That's one of the ways we became friends, is her Instagram stories where she was breaking down books recommended. I was like, oh my gosh, you're picking up stuff that no one else has mentioned ever.
Oh, she's so smart. She's so freaking smart, and she's so warm and kind, and just one of my favorite people that I got to see in person, where it was like, oh, you're exactly like I thought you were, plus more.
Okay, so I know lots of people have questions for this. I mean, I do too, because I'm a nerd. We know you did tons and tons of research. The research was great, but then at a certain point, you know, you got to let the research go to write your story, because this isn't
Yes,
a
yes.
historical fiction romantic. This is historical fiction, fantasy, romance. It's all the things. It's a romance, dark romance. So
history always bends to the story. Like the history is real unless I needed to change it to make the better story, because the better story wins.
yes, I love that. So for each of you, actually, because I'm sure, Lena, that you, as you said, you did the research on like the, you know, I'm sure clothing, and I'm sure some of the history too, not just how it looks. But what are a few of the crazy things that could have been in the story that were real that you didn't get to use? Give me a thing or two, because I know you said before, you're like, you don't even know the stuff that's real. It's crazy. Well, what's a couple crazy things that you didn't get to use but were real?
Well, probably just extra stories. Like there's, if I put 100 characters total in the book, there was 500 characters to choose from the court. Like there was just always more that I could do. And like over the course of 3 edits, I pared down what I initially had to make it more streamlined. And it's just, you just have to pick and choose the absolute best of the things so you don't end up with too much.
Yeah. Lena, is there anything for you?
No, because I was not in that process. I was very focused on what I needed to do for the artworks that was gonna be in the book, because I knew I had a lot of artworks to do. So that I was also starting to get very picky with what I did draw. So whenever I got new chapters from Sophie, I would be like, okay, how finished are these chapters, or how much can I expect there to be changed? And then Sophie would tell me, well, this is what it's going to be. So you can draw anything from this, but it's only the names or places that are going to be different. And I would be like, okay, then I'm going to pick something that I know for sure will be a part of the last book. So I would do a sketch of that. And then at the beginning, I was only doing line work. And then I would wait with the coloring and rendering until I knew that this was going to be the piece for the chapter. So, yeah.
Yes, that's true. Because while we were doing it in progress, every once in a while I'd be like, actually, Lena, I'm changing the color of this thing you've drawn like 7 times. And Lena would be like, ah! No, she'd be like, no problem. Like it was no problem at all.
That's it. About being a digital artist is that I can actually just go in and change stuff like a color of a certain object. Then that's no problem. So
she's very patient with me.
yeah.
So also, I know that from discussions we had before that whatever the art piece for the chapter was, like what the theme of the chapter was. So Lena, were there, I mean, I know there were, this is a cheater question for myself, but what are some of the scenes or characters you wish you got to draw more of, but they aren't the focus of the chapter, so you couldn't do it?
Oh my God. I wish I had drawn so much more of Anastasia's family. Like I'm actually working on a piece of Ollie and Axel from one of the scenes in the story, because I love them. I love them so much. And I would love to do more of Damien and Nicolasia's story. I mean, Nicolasia, he appears like 2 times, I think, in my works, but I wish I could have included him a bit more because I love that guy so much. So yeah, just generally some more, family dynamics, and also, of course, there's just so many scenes that I wish I could have done. But eventually I had to be very, very strict with my own creativity and my own drive. So I had to be like, okay, now focus. What is the most important thing people needs to get out of this chapter within the art? So I had to kill some darlings, if you can call it that, and be like, okay, I will wait with this until later, and then people will see it later. As I promised, I will do more Anastasia artworks. There will be more scenes that will come out, because I have too much love for the artworks I did, and the amount of time I spent developing the characters, or not the characters because that was developed by Sophie, but for me, their designs and the all the faces I got in my brain when I was making it. I need to get it out somehow. And there were future artworks of all this that I'm talking about. So
Love it. I love it. Were there a lot of edits to, or how many edits were there to? Do you mean the final photos in the book, Raquel, or do you literally mean the last photo?
She probably means the last portrait of Anastasia and Damien, which is one of the most spectacular, and that's
Okay.
and it's bookended. That one that you showed is like at the beginning of the book,
Yeah.
Anastasia as she is at the beginning of the story when she's an adult, and then at the end what she ultimately becomes, and it's like a perfect rainbow of her progress that Lena created.
Love it.
yeah, that one had no edits. That was just knew exactly what the epilogue picture was gonna be. I just knew it from the start. When I finished the chapter, I was just like, it's just gonna be this, because I know where I started, I know where I'm gonna finish it. So yeah, that was pretty just straightforward.
Yeah. So Sarah asks, which piece of art within Anastasia was your fave to create, and which piece of art was your fave from Sophie's other projects? Yeah, I have that as one too. Great question, Sarah.
Yeah, that's like choosing your babies.
These are the questions that the authors have to answer. So there's some for you, Lena.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I love the ones that has the most story, like that is a specific scene. I love those because they give me like put my experience as a movie, also cinematic photographer, because I've worked with that before. So it gives me like the screenshots that I want to create. But that's really difficult. But I have some. If I can't really pick one for Anastasia because that's too hard. I did more than 100 artworks for Anastasia, so that's hard for me to say. But if I'll pick Lark because that sums up everything for me, because where I started and where I finished it. But for the other books, I'm still in love with some of the art I did for Stolen Air, because that book means the world to me. I think it's the wedding picture again for
That's such a good choice.
It's not that it's super complicated or I did more complicated pieces and more pieces that I'm proud of, but emotionally, some of the pieces that I connect to with most emotion are sometimes the most simple pieces, the ones that are most meaningful to me. But yeah, again, I put so much emotion into every single piece that I do because I want them to emphasize what is written within the words of the book. So yeah.
Okay. I like that. Let's see if I want to ask one of these or. Well, Tiff, I think we've talked about this. So let's bring this up again for this audience, how this went for you, both of you.
It absolutely does, because when Lena draws a drawing for me, it very much creates a mood or an idea for me. So like one of the first drawings that Lena ever drew for me for Anastasia, I'm trying to remember exactly where this one was. So basically, it was a drawing of Rasputin that she did very early on.
Yeah.
And she had drawn like this very kind of gothic and moody tower space for him. And he has this like headboard on his bed that is like stone angel wings. And later Anastasia finds out that that's like his wife's headboard, and he takes it with him everywhere he goes. And so once Lena had drawn this drawing, and I had described the room, she had drawn the drawing. It had really just like the colors and the way that she did it and like the attitude and the style she put on him, it just generated like 100 ideas and 100 images and pictures in my head. So it's almost like if she draws 4 drawings, the one that we both like magnet onto is the one that becomes what we actually do. So like for Damien, she drew me, when Lena's talking about character design, a lot of times she would draw me like 5 versions of Damien with different hair. And then we would both look at it and be like, and she'd do them at all the different ages. Because one of the challenges for Lena in this book is that Anastasia and Damien go from like 11 and 14 respectively up to like their late 20s. So she had to draw them at all these various ages and show how their personalities are changing and how their appearance is changing, and like how the things that have happened to them have marked them, and how their clothes changed as who they are changes. And it was just incredibly complex. And so we would go through the designs together and be like, so should Damien become more like this or more like that? When Anastasia's in her trash phase, as we jokingly called it, like, you know, the famous pictures of Anastasia with like the fingerless gloves and the suitcase and the coat and the hat, like the reason that those images are so iconic and so important is because Anastasia is the people's princess because she was cast down to nothing. She was living as a commoner. She lived as the lowest of the low. So she develops this incredible compassion. The other day I was talking to someone like Anastasia. I was joking and saying Anastasia has a lot to go through before she becomes the people's princess. You don't just transform from completely brainwashed to someone who could actually be an incredible leader of the people overnight. You really have to go through the shit. You have to go all the way down to the bottom. So Lena really put time into thinking, like, when Anastasia's in her trash phase, when she's poor, like, what does she look like? What does it say about her? How is she different than when she was the princess? And what does she ultimately become? And how does that look different? It was complicated. And it was very inspiring to me to watch her kind of go through it and to do it together.
Yeah.
Love that. I love that. Let's see if there was some more specific to these. Of course there were. Someone asked, this was kind of fun, and I think maybe because I just rewatched the film last night. Someone asked if there was a change you could make to the animated film, what would it be? Which has nothing to do with something to do with things.
I think it was just that Lena and I were like, Rasputin needs to be like much hotter than this. We were not down with the ugly, gross. Like, if there's one thing that turns me off, it is grossness. I don't like when things are yucky, like it sicks me out. So I always want to take gross and turn it to like intense and hot.
And that is the thing that is more scary. I do like it when the villain is actually attractive, because it makes them more scary for me, because you could fall for them super easily, because you're like, well, they're attractive, they're no harm for me. But
Rasputin was incredibly charismatic. He had these eyes that just mesmerized people. Apparently he had like this giant horse penis that could make people pass out with orgasms. Like, the stories that went around about him were insane. He was magnetic. He would grab the queen and he would grab the grand duchesses, the aunts, and he would kiss them on their faces and kiss their hands, and he would call them these informal terms, and he would give them pet names and nicknames and worm his way into their lives. Like, he was charm. He had charm to burn. Even though he was outrageous and a liar, he just like got through it on like charm and lies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the dangerous ones for sure. Yeah. I say more bar talk. There can always be more bar talk. The best parts. Like, we were quoting the entire, all of his parts are the best parts.
Well, and I did not give Bartok is just like an Easter egg in my book. There's just like is a bat in the room. I didn't there. No. I tried to make the book a lot more real, like the real world, but with magic. But I did love just giving little nods to the movies, because the movie is so iconic, and it has this spirit of joy and fantasy that is just so sweet.
Yeah, it's so great. I mean, it definitely has like the creepy aspects though too. I mean, adult, those movies you watch as an adult, that you're like, how was I not terrified of this when I was a woman?
Because Rasputin is very terrifying.
Well, because he seems funny when he's like dead and gross, but he has this power of like, I'm going to destroying them all.
Like, always said with a bit of humor, so you kind of never really know if he's actually meaning this until the very end of the movie, where you're just like, okay, he means it. He means it. He literally means it.
Yeah,
it's this sense of danger that really is like core to the Anastasia story. Like, everyone wanted to kill the Romanovs all the time. All of their ancestors had bombs thrown at them and swords hacked at them, and people were trying to kill the Romanovs constantly. So if you have to understand the constant danger to them to understand why they were so violent and aggressive themselves. Like, this is like real life Game of Thrones. It's intense.
Yeah.
complete with all the inbreeding.
Yeah, well, that's all Yeah, well, that's all royals.
Do that. Okay. This is a good one. How did you decide the powers or the gifts that people would have? And we'll keep that spoiler free still. I didn't say this at the beginning because we dived right in. I do have a tiny bit of a spoiler section planned for later on, but I just mean people have gifts. That's not like a spoiler in this. There's magic.
Yes.
Without
There's magic.
Yeah.
And everybody's magic is a little bit different. Magic itself is kind of a living organism. It can grow and evolve. Like you can develop your magic powers. You can mix your magic powers with other things. It's very much like a biological force inside of their world. And some people naturally have a high level and some people don't. And you can try and increase what you do have. So it is a very malleable substance, but it can also be highly explosive and dangerous and chaotic and do things to you that you didn't think it was going to do. There's always a cost. I think in any fantasy system or any magic system, there's always a cost to the magic.
Yeah. So how did you decide? That's a question.
Well, for me, it was what I really wanted to focus in this book as a theme is why do we justify the evil that we do? All of us make mistakes. All of us do things that we know are wrong. And what are we saying to ourselves in our head when we make that choice that makes it feel okay to us in that moment? And the Romanovs did it, and every single one of us does it in our daily lives, where we know something's wrong, either bad for us or morally wrong or not nice to someone else, but we make it seem okay to ourselves. So with the magic, I was trying to think like, if that's kind of the general theme of the book is really taking accountability for our real motivations and actions and how they affect other people, then I was just thinking like, magic is almost like in this story, it's almost like a drug or like a steroid. And it's like, it boosts you and it helps you and it gives you more power. But like most things that give you more power, it also can push you into being a worse person or having other negative impulses or negative actions, or it can make you a little more callous or a little more cruel. So that's part of the aspect of the magic is it's like every decision to use it is also a decision to allow it to have more influence and control over you.
I like that. Let's see. I think those were a lot that we had about this book specifically. Lots of people want to know about future things and how they connect, of course. But let's start with which one do I want to go? Sorry, I have so many good questions. So let's go with nope. We'll just go with that. What's coming next? We'll start with that. Everyone wants to know that, and we'll just go with that. I'll pick another question.
So typically I have two things going on at once at any given time. What I'm working on for the Patreon and what I'm working on is like my main next book that's coming out. So previously in the Patreon, I was working on Kitten, which is this story with pet play in it, which was just very kinky. And over the weekend, I had this really, really good idea for what I want to do with Kitten when I turn it into an actual book. Because when it's in the Patreon, I'm just kind of having fun and like exploring ideas on it. But like this was when I came up with like the real actual story that I want to do with it. And so I had this really kinky kind of taboo, naughty idea for it. And so I think I'm going to pull Kitten out of the Patreon and I'm going to write it in this new way that I just came up with over the weekend. And I'm like so into, and I haven't even told Lena yet. We have like a call booked for this week where I'm going to tell her all the details. And so I think that's going to be our next mainline project. And then meanwhile, Lena and I have been passively talking and working on this vampire project that we're probably going to keep in the Patreon for now, because I like anything that's like kind of new. I like to do like a few shorts in the Patreon and then kind of see what's my favorite of those ideas. So we'll keep vampires over there for now. And then Lena and I are going to go into this super kinky naughty one next.
So is one of those vampire books planned for 2023 then? Like, do you know?
I hope so. I don't want to like commit to any deadlines. I'm the one that I'm doing with Kitten is already half done. So that one I'm going to probably have out within like, I would say probably 2 months ish. But vampires, I can't say. I'm going to work on that one as a sideline for a while. So
that's fair. I like it. You have earned the I'm not going to tell you guys yet.
I don't want to promise something and be wrong. So
we're good. So okay, here's some of the fun ones. We're shifting to some fun ones, and then everyone who's watching, I'm going to put the spoiler card up in like 15 minutes. And again, we're not going to like ruin the end of the story kind of spoilers, but for people who don't want to know any more than we've talked about, you can leave at that time. But anyway, so some just fun ones that don't have to do with Anastasia as much, more with writing and with art as well. So are there any other fairy tales or historical events that you'd be interested in adapting? Because, that'd be cool. So what are some of the things?
I'm not really sure. I've had like several ideas over the years, but there's not one that I'm like really planning on at the moment. There's tons that have interest to me, but it's like for example, I've always loved the Hades and Persephone story, but there's been many good versions of that lately. So it's like, there's things that I have interest in, but nothing that I've really thought about in any deep way.
You could do some Nordic mythology. There's stories there.
Lena, I've given her some friend homework to read East of the Sun and West of the Moon. So
yeah, well,
East is my favorite book of all time. I told still as a 30-year-old woman, East is my favorite story of all time. And I was like, you got to read that one.
I would love to, because I would say I love to draw anything that Sophie does. I really do. But the wonderful thing about fantasy or historical thing is that it is more challenging for me, because there goes a lot more into the design of places and costumes and hair design and stuff like that. Because the more modern it gets, the more, I'm sorry to say, but the more boring it gets with the clothing and stuff.
For the artist, yeah.
Because the men are usually just wearing suits and it's just, I mean, I like a hot guy in a hot shirt as much as anybody do, but as a challenge, there's not much for a challenge when you're drawing. So he's like, okay, another shirt, another color, another shirt.
She'll give him lots of tattoos, Lena. You can do
and the tattoos, yeah. I get a lot of. If I can hide a tattoo, I would love to. But
I know. So you pick the most tattooed man as your favorite one to draw.
But Lena does Miko's tattoos so hot. Like, it's so time consuming, but it's so gorgeous. I love it.
I'll say something, but the tattoo has the most symbolism in Miko's tattoos are the one on his arms, because the ones that Nessa discovers on him or can see clearly on him. So the other tattoos that he has are more like this web of whatever that just looks like a badass tattoo, because he didn't, like, what I got from the book was that he didn't want his men or companions to notice that he had a more sensitive side to his tattoos, or a more sensitive meaning behind his tattoos. So I kind of did a lot of the symbolism that Sophie writes about within these forearm tattoos. And then mix them with a skull or whatever, because there needed to be some
manly. It's gonna have scary ones.
Lena was such a good girl, reading such good, sweet, darling, nice books, and then you sucked her in, Jen, and Miko sucked her in, and it was this black hole that pulled her right into the dark side.
I love it.
Yeah, Miko was my perfect bet. Perfect.
That's all of our favorites, though. Like, we all want them to be big and scary and to like kill people and be soft for us. Like, that's why Beauty and the Beast retellings work in any genre that anyone puts them in. Like, it could be a small town Beauty and the Beast, or it can be like an actual fairy tale retelling that like Grace Draven does, and he actually is a beast that like eats people.
Yeah.
Like that's the versatility of that myth and fairy tale, So another random one has there been any more like adaptation news, Sophie? Has anything changed in that? What's happening for anything?
No, so on our plate, Lena and I want to eventually recover and add some new illustrations to the Kingmaker series, and we would even love to do some graphic novel chapters for Kingmakers when we re-release it. But it's like Lena and I just wish we had like 3 of us, because we have all these things we'd love to do, but each one of them takes this immense amount of time. So we always have to work on the current project first, and then if we have time, we can head back to the backlist and make something new.
But I'm drawing from Kingmakers. I mean, so there's always a Kingmakers going. I have another Dean and Leo drawing coming.
Yes.
I haven't told Sophie about this at all. It is coming. There's another Dean and Leo rival drawing.
Lena's been making all these Christmas themed
Yes.
Kingmakers ones, and like because Kingmakers is like Mafia Harry Potter's, and as you know, Harry Potter has this very like winter Christmas theme. So she's been mixing in like all of these perfect visual elements from like everything I love into these drawings, and I'm just like, she did this gothic one of Anna where Anna looks like super goth, but she has all this like holly all around her, and it's I can't wait to post it. It's so gorgeous.
It's so beautiful. I love it. I love it. Okay, so someone also asked Sophie, who was or is your favorite male character you've written?
Well, it's these questions are so hard because my favorite is always whoever I'm like currently working on and like pouring all my love into. So like Damien has been my favorite for 10 months or whatever as I've been working on him. He represents the ultimate in sacrifice for your partner. Like that love where you will do absolutely anything for the other person. Where they're your soulmate, where there is nothing, there is no limit, there is no line, there's nothing that you won't do for them if they need it. And his love is just so pure and so deep and so endless and timeless. And so Lena and I just like that's why those like bookend portraits are so beautiful to us, because Anastasia starts out alone, but by the end she has her other half, this person that completes her, that helps her be the best version of herself, and her for him. And so Lena and I are just like crying babies over it all the time.
Yeah. Someone also asked why you chose to write romance when you started writing.
So when I very, very first started, I read everything. Like I read nonfiction, fiction, like every single genre of fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, romance, just anything and everything. If it was good, I would read it. So when I went to start writing, I simply picked romance because it's the easiest market for self-publishing to get your toe in the door and get started in. And so I knew I needed to make money. And I was like, here's an opportunity to do it and to write, which I love. But like, I immediately became so addicted to it the second I started doing it, because the romance and the sex aspect of the story has always been my favorite. And finding out that you could write this like very, very graphic stuff, like, and that people were so into it, and like that people had all these same strange interests and loves that I have, like, because when you're just a girl and people, especially raised as I was in like a very restrictive religious environment, you feel very shamed and very weird for the things that you like. Like, I think every boyfriend I ever had shamed me for like having like non-consent fantasies. And it's like, as abuse victims often have these fantasies, but I didn't know that at that time, that it was normal. I felt shamed and gross and horrible about it. I had all this religious shaming, and it was so incredibly freeing to learn that like everything weird and kinky and dark that I've ever liked is beloved by thousands and thousands of other women, usually for the exact same reasons. So I went from feeling alone and strange to just feeling so connected to the most fun, the most passionate, the most intelligent women that love all the same things.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I don't the book refuge doesn't put up with that shit around here. If the shaming happens, you can go away, because they don't put up with it around here. Even when there's things that are too weird for me, doesn't mean they are not acceptable. Like I just reviewed a book today that I was like, DDLG is too much for me. I can't do it. But you should do it if you would like to do it.
And that's the thing. It's like no one's saying you have to like tentacle stuff or whatever it is. It's like to each their own. The point is just that it doesn't say anything negative about you to be interested in something that is just unique and titillating, that explores some aspect of psychology through sensuality. Like this is a universal human experience, but it is one that has been shamed for like all of time, up until finally people are.
Yep.
The age of the internet has freed us all.
Yeah.
Lena, what has your romance reading journey been like? And the art.
I'm very new. I'm very new in the romance story or journey, because I never knew until COVID happened that what I needed in my reading experience was romance. It's like that. It's just weird, but when I first started, it was very soft, because I always looked for romance in every read I ever did, but I didn't know that, and it's stupid because I've known so much about movies. There are genres in movies, and there's a literally movie genre that is called romance. Why wouldn't there be that in books as well? But apparently
Yes.
I didn't think that. So it was only when COVID happened that I started to dig into what is the romance genre in books, and I realized we don't have anything in Danish. So I started to look for, of course, for English books because I love reading English. And then I realized there was a whole community around romance books. And that was how I found the Book Refuge and started to listen to all your videos, Jenn. And then I just got sucked in and I was like, there's so much I need to read. There's so much I need to read. And that just happened. And eventually it was Sophie's books that got recommended. And I was just like, but Dark Mafia? I don't think so. That was me. I'm a Western girl. I love the cowboys. I love the Oregon Trail stories. I love all the historical things about the Wild West and everything. So, but then I loved and that's back to Stolen Air again. But I didn't like the cover for Brutal Prince. So I thought, can I skip that and just go to the one where the guy on the cover is actually appealing to me? Right? So
This is because Lena and I have the same strange taste in men. So like the Brutal Prince cover is like a very classically handsome man, and the Stolen Air cover is this model who I literally based the character of Nico off of. I saw this picture of this model with tattoos all the way up to his chin and like on every inch of his skin. He's very skinny. He's blonde. He looks like he should be on a Calvin Klein ad from like 1997. Like he has this very distinct like moody gothy look to him, and that's like I love the weirdest looking guys, and like I've never been one to go for the classically handsome. So I love those two books because it's very like 1-2 punch. Either you like this or you like that. Either you like the romantic comedy of Brutal Prince or you like the gothic moodiness of Stolen Air.
And that was why that was mainly just how it all started for me, or developed. I would say developed because I got sucked into a whole new world that I didn't know existed. And that, of course, also sparked a lot of because I was just rediscovering, again, because of COVID, my drawings, because I picked them up because I had nothing else to do than started drawing again. And I would say I got artistic enlightenment, or what is it called when you just get a bomb dropped on your head and you're just like
awakening.
Awakening, that was the word. And I was blown out of my mind with this whole new area, and look where it's at.
Well, Lena and I have both really experienced the difference between working on something as a hobby and working on something more than full-time hours, and the difference in how you grow and how your art grows when it's like going from working on something on the side 20 hours a week to like sometimes 60 hours a week when we were really in the thick of it, of just every single day working on your craft, working on it, getting it better, having someone else give you feedback and be like, oh, this was good, but you should a little bit fix that. Like it's a whole other level of like Lena's art has like doubled and tripled and quadrupled in just all of the techniques that she's figured out and the different styles she has mastery of now. Like she did all the covers for the new illustrated Real Birthright series in this like beautiful watercolor style that was like an all new thing for her. She can figure out anything given enough time.
Yeah, that's the thing I got now. I got time. And that is the most important thing. If you want to get better at something, it is to give yourself the time to do it and focus on it. And I'm just so happy that I now have the time to develop my artistic expression and just get better with each book. So naturally, Sophie's artworks in her books will get better when they start to come out, because
everyone is better than the one before. And every time Lena draws me new things, she's like, I'm trying this new thing. Like when she sent me the Kingmaker stuff, I was like, holy shit. And she's like a brand new artist every 6 months. She's like, now I do this. So I'm like, oh my God, okay. I love it.
You're gonna the Kingmakers are gonna be like the old textbooks where there's 11 generations of them and you have to get one answer year because I mean, I can't use the 8th generation for college this year. No, you did the 11th, and now you gotta get the next one. I love that. Okay, right before we go to spoilers, so people are asking about what signings and in-person events you have planned for next year. And
Yeah, so I know.
things planned.
Oh yeah, so the ones that I know I'm doing for sure is I'm doing Book Bonanza, Colleen Hoover's one. I'm doing a Polycon again, and I think there's one more, but I'd have to. Oh, and I think we're going back to Vegas for the Vegas. So yeah,
That's the one I'm gonna try to do next year.
it was super fun. The Vegas setting was.
Love it, love it. Okay, well, we're gonna do it. We'll give people a couple minutes if you want to ditch, or if you're now like, oh my gosh, okay, I have some questions. Of course, Sophie has the will to say, not gonna answer that one because maybe it has something to do with a future book or something. There are some questions from the book that maybe you're not supposed to know the answer to, but if you have some spoiler type questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll see if she answers them. And the first thing I would like to know, and you can confirm or deny, is there a reason we didn't see someone's body at the end?
Yes.
Is there a reason why?
Initially, I was like, that person is dead. 100% they are dead. But then later I was like, I don't know though. There is something to be said for being trapped for a long time and almost dead and maybe going a little bit crazy, but then escaping. So I'll see.
Why be a vampire if you can't stay alive for a very long time?
So we'll see.
Yeah, and that is another question of like why vampires for this? You know, want to be fantasy, why vampires?
The reason why vampires is because what I was saying before about Rasputin. Rasputin was a manipulator and a liar. And I think one of the most interesting aspects of vampires is their ability to bend you to their will. The idea of like when you feed off of them, or when they feed off of you, or when you look into their eyes, or when you allow them to do something sensual with you, you are giving them power over you. And it very much parallels the usage of the Carrawhite in the book, where it's like you can use Carrawhite and it gives you power, but it also gives it control over you. And I think that's true of a lot of things in our lives, where those things help us or benefit us, but we are also giving away a certain aspect of our own self-control at the same time, be it drugs and alcohol or anything else that we do, where it's like it's providing a benefit to us, but it's also taking part of our willpower or our control.
I like that. I also had wondered, because I know one of the things in the beginning is that, you know, they're kind of waiting around for which of the Romanov kids is going to get a certain power, which one's going to have. And some of the kids are stronger than others, things like that. And one of the things that I had wondered, because of later in the book how Anastasia regaining her hope and getting that back helps give her, like, you know, it juices her up. That's what I was calling it, juices her up.
Yes.
Is that part of the reason the loss of hope for the I just forgot her name, the Empress, the like lessening of her power? Was it her like losing hope over her son, or were they just not as powered up because they weren't using, you know, the Paralight? Or
it's all of the things. I imagine it like we all have somewhat magical abilities. Like when you see a mom lift a car off of her kid, when you see Michael Phelps swim the fastest he's ever swimmed to win the Olympics, like that was his fastest. He surpassed his own previous superhuman speed to win against all odds when he was way behind. Humans can do things that seem superhuman, that seem magical when we are pushed to our absolute limit, when we're motivated to our absolute strongest. And that's kind of what I imagined with the power inside the book. There is magic power, and there is these stones or these objects you can use to amplify it. But at the end of the day, you are using your own human ability, your willpower, your drive, that spark inside of us that we really do possess. And that's why when Anastasia talks about having to use her hope or having to use her best memories, that's what we all dig deep for when we're at our absolute lowest and we have nothing left. That is what we use. Like, so I was just trying to make the magic as real as possible and as linked to the things that actually do power us as humans.
Okay. Lena, what were some ways that you tried to show the powers in your drawings? Like how because that's a hard thing to show, especially when magic is like you can show like the beginning result or the end result of something. But did that have to do with like the frames for you? Is that you bringing in magical elements or?
It was a bit, but I would say I tried to keep the magic as much out of my drawings as possible and more give them like what is the physical effects of the drawings, because when it has something to do with things happening that you can't see, like telekinesis, I could draw somebody throwing a cup and the cup would be in the air or something like that. But I would say I just loved more to focus on what was physically going on. Like when I had to draw Damien clutching Nicolas's head at some point, I couldn't draw what was actually happening, instead of just drawing the expression on Nicolas's face, experiencing the extent of Damien's powers, for example. And Anastasia would mostly be like, when she has her firepower, it would be like a glowing effect or something like that. And I would change the light to imagine that there was coming light from her instead of physical flames or whatever.
A lot of the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lena. You finish.
No,
you finish.
It's hard to explain because I didn't really. I tried to keep it out of it as much as possible because I also wanted something for people to envision themselves. Because if you draw, I feel like if you draw too much, then you can also take some of the imagination out of people. So I needed there to be some elements that I didn't.
Yeah.
A lot of Lena's compositions kind of center around like the way that people are touching each other. So it's like sorry, this is so hard to do backwards. The way that their hands are touching and the way that that you can see the longing on each other's faces, and the way that the snow is like symbolic of the fact that they're like frozen and dead and separated from each other in this part of the story. Like she's always expressing the emotional experience and the gestures and the way that you touch someone to show certain emotions, as opposed to, as she's saying, like cups flying through the air or things exploding. Like
because there was one chapter where a lot of stuff went down, and I don't want to say too much about what's happening, but that was one of the hardest chapters for me to illustrate, because there was actually more than one chapter where a lot of stuff down. And I was like, how can I illustrate this? Because there's so many important things happening. And that's when I did a more aesthetic or symbolic piece instead of a literal scene from the
do you mean that one, Lena? Is that the one you mean? So this is from the ice storm chapter where the family gets attacked, and instead of drawing like all of the gory violence, Lena just did this very striking and symbolic imagery of like Rasputin's eye, which is controlling and powerful, and just like the broken ice that Anastasia falls through. But she has other ones too, where she'll show like two things happening at once. Like there's Anastasia and Damien dancing together, but then that's the part afterward where they split apart. So sometimes she'll kind of like juxtapose two opposite events or two opposite moments.
Yeah, but that was all how I could envision the scene happening or the image happening. And sometimes it would be very clear to me. One with Damien and Anastasia dancing and Damien leaving and Anastasia running after him. That one was just in my mind instantly. I knew that was what I wanted to draw. But sometimes I had to be more, I had to work for it. I would say do a lot of sketches, really do a lot of compositions. And I have these 3D models that I move around to. If I can't envision the characters myself, I use a 3D program with just dolls, basically just plain dolls, where I move them around, and then I take my camera and I move it around the dolls to see what would make the best or most enticing image or pose for this particular page. And sometimes just happens, sometimes work was hard. Yeah, it took a lot of time. So.
Sophie, how did you decide the cost and how it was paid by some different people at the end of this?
Oh, yeah. So
by that I mean which things got undone and which things didn't. I'll just say.
So
I can be a little crazier.
So as part of the magic, as part of everything, I felt like there had to be a cost. And as part of getting a second chance at saving her family, the cost was Damien, and it was a real cost, and it fucked them both up. Like
a lot of people are mad. Like what people are bitching about stuff. They're like, Damien had to pay everything, and Anastasia just gets to be Empress and blah blah blah. Like, okay, that's not but okay.
I think Anastasia went through the shit pretty hard herself, but I mean, these are the subjective aspects of books where one of the things that people are never going to entirely agree on is who should be punished in what way, to what degree, and who should be forgiven and what they should have to do to be forgiven. These are things that we will never all agree on, but you just try and find balance within the story.
That's right. Well, because my pushback on that is that she has the memories of how horribly horrible it was to lose everyone. And some people, some people might see that as like, yeah, but it's undone. And it's like, does that erase the like weight of your heart that you watched it? I don't know. Am I ever going to forget Anna Pavlova? No. Am I going to forget that? No. So Anastasia's not going to forget it either.
It almost fucks her up more because she's the only one that lived through it. She's the only one that experienced it. Her body does not match what she went through. She no longer looks like what she was. What she is inside doesn't match her exterior. She lost those experiences with Damien. She paid a heavy, heavy cost. But it just... she had to see the future. She had to experience it to really truly change as a leader and to know what not to be and what not to do.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I've said this to quite a few people who finished. I was like, I mean, some of the people we got back were worth it for me. So I was like, I'm okay with it.
Nicolash is definitely one of my favorite side characters in this one, where he is the love where he will do anything to get his woman. Like he will do anything to get her. It doesn't matter how forbidden it is, how much he's not supposed to have her, who he has to get in a fight with. Like he will do anything to protect her.
Patreon short of February, I would like Nicolash and his
that too.
Yes, we know it's on my side.
I love that.
But I mean, it's also a thing of like things aren't fair. Like life isn't fair, and even in a fantasy world where we will have a happily ever after. One of the things that makes certain fantasies, whether romance or not, hit us is like what we had to go through to get to it. And for me, the fact that this one is a standalone book and that entire journey is encapsulated in one book is a crazy feat, because who writes a standalone fantasy anymore? Nobody. It's at least 2 books or more. Or my favorite series ever is 8. Like nobody can do it in one. And so I don't know. To me,
that's why the book is so long. If you want something to feel epic and full, if you want it to feel like a real journey, if you truly want to be immersed in a fantasy world, if you want to feel like you really went on an adventure, it can't be 70,000 words. But I know that that's hard for some people. But I will just tell everyone, I know it says 656 or whatever, but 110 pages of that are art, so it's not as bad as you think.
Well, and Kindle makes you even more scared though, because Kindle says it's 8.
Yeah. I know. Kindle loves to scare everybody. It's really like 550. It's not that bad.
Well, right. And I mean, honestly, people say that. I was like, you guys, Anna Huang's last book she wrote in a series was almost 600. Like, you guys aren't like, you look at the book and you're like, oh gosh, it's so big. And I was like, it doesn't feel like that when you're in a book. But
you have to do the initial investment to get the payoff. If the story starts immediately and it pays off immediately, you don't get as big of a bang. You have to light a long fuse to get a huge bang at the end. And the bang at Anastasia will absolutely rip your heart out and make you bawl if you make it through to the end. That's why everyone's putting the reviews of it's my favorite book of the year, the best book I've ever read. Like the end is absolutely worth it. But I do understand that I made it hard for people along the way. So I'm not going to blame you if it intimidates you.
But that's the icing on the top, isn't it? That you sometimes you don't get to the icing on the top at first. You need sometimes to go through the ice cream to get to the top. No, this is a bad.
A slow burn's payoff relies on the lead up into it and into the slow like building and building of the.
Yeah, and I feel like that's so much more satisfying when you feel like you've been through a journey, and then at the end you get actually a reward, so to say, because the ending is so rewarding. So I would say worth everything. And I love the development that goes into, especially in fantasy books, where you have to talk about the world, you have to talk about the characters that are creating the main characters, because without all the side characters, you don't really have a development for your main character. So they need to be developed just as much as the main characters do. And I feel like that was my experience with working on Anastasia, is that I got as much of Anastasia and Damien as I got of Nicolasia and
well, and the book. The book is best digested if you kind of take your time with it. Like Lena has separated it into these parts, and each one has this like beautiful art that tells you like part 1 and part 2. And it's like if you kind of read like 1 part per day, and it kind of like takes you along through these various time jumps. And it's a book that's meant to be read over time and experienced with the music and the art. It's not meant to be read in 4 or 5 hours. It is a real journey and a real adventure.
Let's not be calling out Sophie.
I mean, you can do whatever you want. I'm not your boss. Do whatever you want. But.
I'm like, excuse me. I mean, it took me 24 hours. It wasn't 5
Oh, there you go. There you go.
But I mean, I would say too, so this is more of my thoughts on like what's considered fantasy romance right now as like a genre of it, is that this is more of what I wish people were writing, not because I want them all to be this book, but because we've been so spoiled that everything's going to start happening immediately in a story, or it's not like clickable, or it has to have a certain level of smut in it to be what is considered whatever. Or a book like this would have been split into 3 books because someone needed to drop it as 3 for their business, which is like, I am not dissing an author who has to do that. I have many friends who are authors. I understand you needing to have a book coming out every 6 weeks to a month, but there's also something of like, I get fatigue with those, I get serious fatigue when you take a story that could be put in one like this. Because this is a story that like, it worked as one, you wrote it to be one, it is, but there's so many I read that are written like yours, but are split into 3. And I'm like, you're dragging me on. And again, I understand the business side because I have friends who need that. But for me, I feel ripped off because I'm like, I have to buy 3 of your books to tell me one story. And you don't have it built as 3. You have it built as.
I hate cliffhangers for exactly that reason. Like it's very unsatisfying, and but also my business did take a hit. Taking almost a year off to write this book really hurt my momentum. It cost me a lot of money. So this business is incredibly challenging all the time. It's competitive. Things change constantly. Like I started writing this book when TikTok was in full flow. Now TikTok is like dying on the vine because like reader groups shift here and there. Like it is. As you say, I don't fault any author for anything that they have to do to make their business work and make their bills work. But I feel very grateful that I have enough of a cushion to be able to take risks on a project like this. We wanted to create something that was art. We wanted to create something that was above and beyond. And I'm glad I had the time to do it. And now I'm excited to go write something a little bit faster and super intense and super dark, because I had like my ultimate romance, ultimate like soulmates, and now I want to write something really filthy.
Yes. Well, that's kind of the last point in kind of the spoiler section was going to be the choices with the romance and how you had that grow and the spice level you chose to write at. Because I mean, I said this when I was starting. I was like, people, if they're going to bitch, they're going to bitch about length. fun pace, and they're going to bitch about spice because it's very different from anything
Yes.
else you wrote.
So there is at least 4 like full spice scenes. It is on page sex, it is graphic, it is many pages, it is described, but it is intimate, romantic, connected, soulmate sex that focuses on the sensual fantasy elements of like, what if you could slow time in the middle of sex? What if you could draw out this sensation or amplify this sensation? So there's a lot of sensual kinky elements to it, but not like kink elements to it. And that was mostly just a choice because I do not put any value on classy or filthy smut. I have no problem with either one of them. But I did feel that since this was a real person, I wanted to lean toward classy and romantic as opposed to like extremely graphic and just like
the sinner
strange.
sweat.
Yes, exactly. I wouldn't do I wouldn't do a Sinner's Duet scene for Anastasia, and I don't think it's wrong if someone else made a different choice. Whatever. That was just what I felt comfortable with. I tried to treat every living character with respect. Probably the only villainous one based off a real person who's just kind of overtly villainous is Liza Tamiba, but I don't know. She did seem like a dick in real life, so I don't know. I don't feel that bad about it.
Well, I mean, and I said this, I think that you'll take as much out of those scenes as you want to take from it. I took a lot out of it because I have read every level of spice that's ever, like I've read every level of it. And for me, between these two who are exploring together, who've grown together, who are together, it isn't about what positions or level of that is being used. That's not what's going on between them. So
it's about the release after the intense slow burn. Like they've been unable to touch. It's about this like finally being able to do what they've longed to do so intensely.
Yes. Yeah. And so if people aren't seeing the connection in that and the beauty in it, like I think you haven't read through the whole story to get to them, because this wasn't going to be like, oh my gosh, the clothes are off. Now we're swinging from sex swings and shit. That's not what's happening. Like that's, maybe later on in their lives too. They're young. That's also the thing. Like this was a double virgin story. Damien doesn't even think he'll ever get half sex without murdering someone. So,
I think the sex in a book should always reflect the characters and their journey. It should be more than just sex. You shouldn't be able to take the sex scene from one book and just swap it with another. So there's always a emotional or personal journey inside the sexual journey for me in my books.
Yeah. So, and again, I think it makes it more open to a wider range, by the way, because I bought this one for my sister, and my sister would not read this if it was one of your Motley books. I was like, sister, you can read this book. It's going to be great.
Anastasia is for everyone. Anastasia is a story with a very positive message. It is literally for anyone who is probably 16 and up. It's like, this is a story of hope and believing in yourself and finding something to keep you going in the darkest of times.
Yeah, I love that. Well, oh my gosh, this was so amazing. Thank you both for coming for this.
Thanks for having us, Jenn.
This was amazing and wonderful, and we look so forward to what you're doing next. Everybody, I'll have all of Sophie and Lena's info linked down below once this is done. And yeah, we can't wait to see you.
And thank you for inviting Lena on. This is my first interview with Lena. I love for people to be able to see her beautiful face and see her wonderful spirit and see her talk about her incredible talent herself, because she is so brilliant and absolutely deserves to have her own voice. So
thank you so much. Thank you. It has been so nice to be included in this, and I'm sorry for all the English hiccups, but yeah.
You're beautiful. You're wonderful. You spoke so eloquently. It just makes you sound more sophisticated than us. And
we could only dream of speaking another language as well as you do English.
All right. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you.